When a fan of a manga series hears that their favorite work is about to be adapted into an anime, their usual response will be excitement to see their favorite characters come to life on screen. When they hear that anime is going to be done entirely in 3D animation, however, that excitement often turns to distrust or even dismay. 3D anime is seen by many hardcore anime fans as a way for animation companies to cut corners or save money, without putting as much effort into the details of the animation. Anime that do use 3D animation for these cost-cutting purposes, along with anime almost entirely done in poor quality 3D animation such as the 2016 adaptation of Berserk, directed by Shin Itagaki, have only served to further push this outlook. However, there is proof that 3D animation can be well made, artistic, and still match the aesthetics of traditional Japanese 2D animation. Today, I'll examine how Studio Orange's Houseki no Kuni, or Land of the Lustrous, and Beastars make the most out of 3D animation and cement its existence as a legitimate anime medium of its own, rather than as a tool to save production costs. For the sake of staying on topic, from this point on when I refer to 3D animation, or 3D anime, I'm going to be referring exclusively to anime that doesn't try to go for heavy realism and CGI. For my purposes, I won't be discussing anime in a similar visual vein as the Final Fantasy series or Harlock Space Pirate, since they more closely resemble and try to emulate live-action films than 2D animation, though some of my points may still apply. I also won't go too in-depth on CGI usage in otherwise 2D animation, though that too has its own merit. First, I would like to address the question of whether this category of animation actually qualifies as anime. Typically, anime can be read as a shortened form of the word animation, in which case even Western animation could be seen as anime. However, an alternative reading of the term is, to quote Sheuo Huigan's article, To Be or Not to Be, Anime, the Controversy in Japan Over the Anime Label, a culturally specific type of Japanese animation that excludes some forms of animation made in Japan. They list a number of characteristics that define anime's general aesthetic, albeit by no means a conclusive one, such as based off manga, the use of camera work to provide motion to still drawings, specific patterns of character design and facial conventions, or complicated storylines with long episodic narratives. Essentially, if it's animated, made in Japan, and looks mostly like other anime, it's anime. My examples of Berserk, Houseki no Kuni, and Beastars all fit the bill for either definition. Therefore, it's safe to say that at least some 3D animation can be considered anime by these standards. One of the major complaints about the 2016 adaptation of Berserk was that character movement was expressed in a way that was neither realistic nor visually pleasing. In many scenes, lip flaps and eyes alike were void of any detail, which resulted in them looking almost robotic. Walk cycles were equally robotic looking when they weren't physically impossible. The issue with this isn't solely that it's lazy or even that it's unrealistic, but more so that it doesn't add any personality to the characters or to the anime as a whole. And personality expressed through movement is so important when it comes to anime. Beastars, on the other hand, does a fantastic job of expressing character through the movement of their 3D models. Beastars is a Netflix adaptation of the manga of the same name by Paru Itagaki. Because it's about a society of animals, Beastars has plenty of additional opportunities to use the animals' body language, like their ears and tails, to express emotion, personality, and even tension, and Studio Orange maximizes on this with their 3D animation. The 3D models give every body part of the character more weight than usually seen in 2D animation, and the end result is characters that are capable of feeling very alive. This isn't just limited to animal characters, though, and can be seen in more humanoid characters in Houseki no Kuni. Houseki no Kuni's gems gracefully demonstrate in 3D animation the stylized expressions normally seen in 2D animation. Yi-Shan Tsai, in her article Close-Ups and Emotive Language in Manga, describes how important the details of a character's face are in expressing an emotion in manga, and after reading the article, I believe the same holds true for anime, especially 3D anime. Although anime has the advantage of movement when it comes to expressing emotion, the facial expressions made by the characters are still where their personalities and feelings shine through. Subtlety isn't always easy in 3D, especially in the cel-shaded style of 3D anime, so either the models should be capable of a lot of different facial movements, as they are in Beastars, or the animators should include close-ups that rely on additional 2D layers to display these details artificially, as in some scenes in Houseki no Kuni. Another strike against Berserk 2016 is its odd use of contrast and art style when portraying monsters. This is supposed to make these enemies look unnatural, and thus more horrifying, but the only real horrifying thing about them is that they don't look much better than the graphics of a PlayStation 2 game. Compared to the other models, they just look out of place. One 2D anime that pulls off contrast for the sake of psychological horror better is Maho Shoujo Madoka Magica. The enemies in this definitely look out of place, but the attention to artistic detail and image quality is high enough that it doesn't look outright bad, and achieves the effect it is going for. Beastars, on the other hand, uses contrast and art style for emotional scenes. What makes Beastars' use of contrast effective, however, is that the art style changes for the entirety of the scene, rather than having something show up in the show that looks like it shouldn't be able to exist in the dimension we've grown accustomed to via suspension of disbelief. It's a visual treat to watch. Houseki no Kuni, on the other hand, largely tries to make models look as if they do belong in the same universe, even if they're using more reflectivity for, say, a liquid substance. Their ethereal Lunarian enemies still fit the same art style, even though they're decidedly different from and alien-looking compared to the main cast. Instead of this effect coming from a change in models, that alien appearance comes solely from character design. A major advantage of 3D animation is that it's easier technology-wise than with entirely 2D animation to have complicated and fast camera work. This is used frequently nowadays in otherwise 2D animation to bring a sense of scale to large battles, or show flips and turns that it's otherwise difficult to draw backgrounds for in 2D animation. It only follows, then, that 3D animation should be able to pull off equally astounding camera work for action scenes, since most scenes take place in 3D surroundings. Houseki no Kuni really plays into this, as it is a fairly action-packed anime, and these action scenes have the camera move quickly and smoothly around the characters as they move, showing off the technology at its finest. Even though Beastars doesn't have quite as many action-heavy scenes, it still takes advantage of it when it can, down to subtle camera movements just to show off characters' emotions. Meanwhile, Berserk's camera work does nothing to make battles more intense, and if anything, tends to make complex action scenes that need to be very clear for the viewer to understand what's going on, even more obscure and confusing. The bizarre zooms and shaky cam don't add anything to the impact of scenes, aside from perhaps a lazy attempt to try and show more movement in scenes that don't even necessarily need any. But enough about Berserk 2016. It's time to focus on what Studio Orange truly excels at, putting effort into the details. With Studio Orange's 3D works, you can clearly see that 3D animation was more of an artistic choice than an economic one, because they poured so much effort into designing systems to portray the characters in the best possible way. A lot of time and thought was clearly put into the making of Beastars' character designs so that the characters could express themselves while still looking like animals. And then even more time was spent perfecting the 3D models so that their fur would look natural. Likewise, Houseki no Kuni has its own tech used to display their models, especially their hair, in such a way that it reflects light like crystal while still moving like part of a human. These choices are deliberate. 2D animation doesn't quite capture the reflectivity of the gems in Houseki no Kuni or the character movement in Beastars quite like 2D animation does, as can be seen in the 2D prototype of Houseki no Kuni and the occasional 2D scene in Beastars. Thomas Lamarre, in his article From Animation to Anime, Drawing Movements and Moving Drawings, discusses the idea of anime as historically being more about animation in terms of movement of existing images rather than drawing movements. 3D animation could represent the next logical step in anime by this description. You only need to draw one 3D model, and you can then move that model as much as you like. But 3D anime has huge potential for expressing things that historically haven't been easily expressed with 2D imagery, a new level in terms of depth, weight, and lighting. As such, it should be considered not only as real anime, but as a valid stylistic choice.